Okay, welcome back. This video will be about token charts and token economy. So I made a video a while ago. I think it's probably we discussed token charts in other videos that were revolving visual schedules or visual supports. So it's been addressed a few times, and I probably gave some examples when I first in the initial videos that I created and posted on YouTube. But I'm going to go into a little more detail, and we're going to actually use a student as an example and talk about how we might introduce a token chart or token economy, and give some examples as well. So let's get started. Okay, so what is a token chart or token economy? It is, and this is a very basic definition, but it is a system that rewards appropriate behavior that allows the learner to earn access to something they value. For example, and I used one from the classroom, a student might earn a token for each completed activity until they earn a break or computer time. They might also receive a token for each response during a matching task or each minute sitting in the morning meeting. It really depends on what skill you're targeting, where the students' skill levels are at, where their compliance is at, where their behavior is at. We'll talk about that in the next slide, I believe, or actually 2 slides ahead. But a token chart can take many different forms. So let's look at some examples before we go into too much detail. If you haven't seen one, so let's just look at a couple examples. This one is pretty close to what we use on campus. We call them star charts, but they're token charts. They just have stars on them, but they can look like this. Typically, they would be laminated. So the top part of that would be laminated with Velcro on each of the empty squares. And then those stars would all be laminated and have Velcro on the back there. So we can stick each star onto the boxes until the student earns all 5. And then they get access. Usually I'm working for that big box is what they're working for. Here's another example where the stars are all filled in. And it gives in a couple of examples of some icons that they could be earning or a reward that they're earning. So toys, TV time, computer, iPad. It really can be anything. What they're working for. It could be a break, it could be hugs, it could be a high five, it could be, we talk about it in a second, but snacks, we don't use them at Odyssey, but we, if you're home, you can easily use an edible. It just really depends on what your student's into, what your learner is into, and what they're going to be motivated by. So let's keep going. But before we implement a token chart, you must consider the learner's skills, behaviors, and ability to follow directions. So in this presentation, we're going to use a sample student and walk through the process. And so one of the things we're going to do, so we're going to kind of go through this process. This is a pretend student. It's actually an issue that is coming up with a lot of our students. So it's something that is a real life example that you might be running into, but we're going to use this specific student and these specific behaviors, and let's get going. So the sample student, we're going to call him John. John is on distance learning, as we are right now, and would prefer to just watch videos on his tablet all day. I mean, wouldn't we all? So, but the target skills, the goal is for John to join his teacher and peers in a Zoom class. It might be every day, it might be once a week. It really depends, but that's going to be something individualized for the student situation, your student. But there's a behavioral concern here. So when the tablet's taken away from John, he engages in aggressive behavior. So we can't just go full bore, expect him to stop everything and just sit on Zoom. So we're going to be using the token chart to build up. And we'll talk about some of the limitations because of behavior, that there is a behavior that's underlying that we need to be concerned about. We'll talk about that when we kind of go through the process. So, and this is kind of what we talked about, is that if we just take the tablet away and try to push him onto a Zoom class, it's not going to work. You're going to get the behavior. So if your student doesn't engage in aggression, it might be tantrum, it might be throwing, it might be crying, it might be something else, and something that they can't participate in the Zoom class. And really, we want the participation in the Zoom class, not just joining the Zoom class. So what we have to do is we need to introduce the token chart slowly and build behavioral momentum, which means we don't want to start with the hardest thing first. We're going to start with something easy, low level, something that's going to happen, and build the system up there. Teach them how to use the token chart first, and then we move on. So in this example, so I said here, if John's been, a lot of Johns on our class, a lot of students on in our school are already familiar with token charts. They know them inside and out. They've seen them for some of our students have seen them for years. Some of them have seen them for a little time, but for this exercise, let's say that he's never seen one before. And for our students right now, where it's March 2020 right now, or 21, they've been on distance learning for quite a while. They might not have seen, John might not have seen a token chart for a year since being on campus. So we're going to need to reintroduce it. But for this example, we're going to just pretend that John's never seen a token chart before. And so I mentioned before, so to build momentum, we need a list of John's mastered tasks. So what are the things, and what I defined it is activities we know he can and will perform with a low potential for aggressive or other maladaptive behavior. So these are things that we know are mastered. And this is going to look different for every student. You know, if we're talking about a younger student or a student with a different skill set, the John that I'm using is a little bit maybe older, has a good amount of skills, but this is an example of things that he'll do these things without a behavior. He'll do these things pretty well without too much resistance. So what you want to have is a list of tasks, and it might be really short ones. These are all these can be a little bit longer. I mean, putting clothes away could be really easy, quick. Putting on shoes might take a couple minutes. Washing hands might take a minute. But these are some of them you want to be, you don't want them to be too long of tasks. You're not going to have them do a full routine of something. We'll talk about that as far as limitations as well, but you want to have something that's going to be brief because you want to get that reinforcement, especially because we're with a token chart, we're teaching the token chart. We want it to go quickly. We want them to earn those tokens as quickly as possible. So we want to have things that are going to be pretty easy and pretty quick. So you're not going to use huge, 20-minute routines for each token. You want them to be short, 30 seconds, sometimes 10 seconds, sometimes 5 seconds, depending on your learner and where they're at. And then we also need a list of activities or items that they might value, that then when we say, what are you working for, that we can put on that, what are you working for? I gave some examples here, taking a walk outside, a snack. Again, at Odyssey, we don't use edibles on campus, but edible reinforcement. But if you're at home, this is an appropriate time for you to use that, if you so choose. Toys, a DVD, a break. It could be anything. Again, it could be just about anything. Sorry. Okay. To start, we want to pick one of those tasks. So throwing trash away, I'm just going to use throwing trash away as this initial example, and then set up the token chart with 4 tokens on the chart. So you have the 4 stars already, and then you have 1 open spot, and then you have your star that's going to go there. So then we want John to be able to choose. We don't want him to just be forced to say, well, you're going to do this and you get access to something we choose. For that example, I mean, we went back to our list. If we showed him, or we could, depending on your learner, you might have a choice board, you might have an assistive tech, like a tablet, you might be able to do it vocally, but you want to give them a choice. So they can identify what they want to work for. So let's say he selected the DVD. This is what it might look like. You have your 4 icons already there. Again, this is a different example, but they're all basically the same. You're going to have some sort of box system that you have 1 missing, and then you have the I'm working toward DVD. So you want to be able to show that to them. And what you're going to do is you're going to present it and say, hey, sometimes you need 1 more star, and then we can do this. Or you want to point to the board, put this in the trash, and then you can watch a DVD for 5 minutes. Again, the language might be different depending on your learner. But you want to show them that token chart and point to that empty spot. Hey, we need this. Get going. At this point, it's very similar to a first then. You might have done first then statements. I feel like we've talked about that in other videos, where you're saying first we're going to do this, putting in the trash, and then DVD. So it's the first then. And then once he throws that trash away, we give him that last token to place on the chart, and we give him social praise too. So great job throwing away the trash. Here's a token. They put it on there. Now it's time to watch DVD. Now for this example, because this is the first time John might have ever seen a token chart, or even just if he hasn't seen it in a while, or you're just trying to build things up, I want to repeat that situation, because you do it one time, one day, it's not going to be effective. They're not going to understand the token chart. But if we want to get that repetition, so in this example, we set a timer for 5 minutes. And then when the timer's almost expired, then we set up the next task. This one might be the dirty clothes in the hamper, or something else from that other list. It's going to be something quick. It could also just be him asking. If we're working on communication, it could just be him or her asking, do you want more time? And they say more time. Oh, great. You get another icon. and you're going to earn that. But we want to remove that last star again because we're only having to earn one. There's 5 total on there, and we build that up over time. We'll talk about that in a second. But we want him to be able to earn that and make it quick. We want to build that momentum so he understands, okay, I do things they ask, I get the star, and I get to do what I want to do. So we pull that last star off. We have another task sort of set up. So if it's dirty clothes, we're going to have the dirty clothes there. We're going to have a hamper somewhat, hopefully close. When the timer expires, we pause the DVD, ask John if he wants more time. Again, if we're working on communication, you might just use that as the thing for the task for him to use his language to ask for more time to earn that star. But for this situation, we're still going to use the dirty clothes. So he says yes, you reset the deal. Okay, put this in the hamper and you can have more DVD time while showing him the token chart again. If he says no, you might have to offer something else. You're going to have to negotiate a little bit. You're going to reset the deal. And again, he puts the dirty clothes away. You come back, he gets that token, he gets more DVD time. Now we want to do this multiple times. That's why you want to keep it short to begin with. You're not going to have it be an hour long or half an hour or even 5-minute long task to earn each star. You want it to be quick, so you can get that repetition. You want to make it easy at first, easy. So we want to do it a few times a day at least. I mean, sometimes if you can manipulate the situation and your environment, you might want to do it, do a token chart every hour. You could even do it every half hour, depending on what the tasks are, how well your student's doing. You want to build that momentum so they can see, I get those stars, I get to do what I want. I fill in that thing, I get to do what I want. So one of the ways that you can do that is you work on, and because we're going to build up, again, we're starting with 1 star, just 1 star. We might want to do 1 star for a couple of days. If your child is a student is a quick learner and kind of gets that momentum, and maybe they've seen a token chart before, that they've had that in the classroom or wherever, whatever setting, you might be able to work pretty quickly. But if it's the first time, so the student's never seen a token chart, hasn't really mastered sort of the understanding of a token chart, you might want to work on 1 for a couple of days and then move to 2. Again, keeping the tasks pretty low, pretty quick. They're not going to be high intensity stuff. They're not going to be things that you're going to get behaviors about. They're going to be really kind of quick ones. I mean, again, you can do high fives, you can do communication. There's so many little things, especially when you're building up early on, that you want it to make it successful for your student to get in, perform those little tasks, and then get those stars. So they get that momentum, they get that understanding clear in their minds. So you might work on 1 star for a couple of days and then get that momentum going. Then you go for 2. Again, keeping the task pretty low intensity. So then it's going to be 2 stars for a couple of days, then 3 stars. And over time, it might take you a long time. It might take you a month to get to 5 stars. It might take you a few days. Some of our students, I mean, if they've used token charts in the past, it could be a day. And again, you're not going to go to the heavy duty, high intensity, stressful tasks, 5 of those right away. You're going to want to build up. Again, our goal in this situation is we want to join the Zoom class. So what I said here is like, we're slowly going to branch out to more difficult tasks. So the goal is really for him to join the peers in Zoom, and getting him on there would require him to put down or put away the tablet and sit for a while. So we'll talk about that in a second, a little bit more. I know I'll talk about that in a later slide. But what we do want to look at is you want to slowly amp it up. You're slowly inching up how many icons, how many stars, how many tokens, and you're slowly inching up that the difficulty of the tasks or the length of time the tasks require to complete. And of course, if John starts exhibiting any behaviors, and your student starts exhibiting behaviors, and it might, and this is something I know we've talked about in other videos, behavioral antecedents, those actions that indicate to you that something might happen, the behavior might happen, we would want to pull back. We want this to be successful. We don't want the token chart should not cause behaviors. So if we start seeing behaviors, we show them the token chart and we start getting resistance, we start getting behaviors, we're going to pull back, clearly. And so one example, you could decrease the number of stars. You could decrease the difficulty of the tasks, or you might have to rethink what rewards you're putting on that. The what are you working for? I'm working for icon, whatever that might be, might not be enough. So it's a balancing act between how many stars are needed, the difficulty of the tasks, and then the magnitude of the reward. Those things are all going to be something you have to balance as you go. And because there's three of them, there's three different variables there. You might find that there might be certain tasks that a certain reward and a number might work. That might work for, cleaning up, and it might work for washing hands. But then for toothbrushing, for changing clothes, for other tasks, that might be too much for them. So you really have to play with that and manipulate those. I think the most important one is probably the magnitude of the reward, because if it is truly a reward, if it's something they really, really want, if it is a reinforcer, and we've talked about that in other videos, if it truly is a reinforcer, then that's going to sort of drive it. But we really need to build up over time how long or how many tokens they need to earn that. So it's a balancing act. So, and it's going to be specific to your student, to your child. So in this exercise, again, the goal is for John to join his classmates in a Zoom class. But when we reach the point that John's completing more difficult tasks, that might be the time. Once maybe we've gotten to the level where we're doing 5 tokens. We're also getting to the level where John's doing some more difficult tasks beyond the washing hands and the putting things in the trash, putting things in the hamper. We're inching up to where we're getting close. Now, considering, again, the Zoom class might be a half an hour long. So we can't expect him to work for one icon for that 30 minutes. So we might just give him, and depending on where your student is, some of our students, and I know this, some of our students want nothing to do with the Zoom class being on a screen anywhere near them. So it might just be tolerating the Zoom class on the screen. You might just give them an icon. Hey, good job. Just, yeah, we can say hi to your teacher, and that's it. But even it could be far away, but you build up. So it might be you might be giving him a token for just joining the class. You could give him, there's another one for staying on screen for 1 minute. You could even do one for waving to the class. Just a quick wave icon, they get a token, and you just move along. And then allowing the exit to receive their reward. It's completely going to be personalized to your student. And if you need guidance on this, reach out to me, reach out to the teachers, and we can sort of help you, kind of make a plan on really what, how high we want that bar to be as we start introducing things. And I kind of said that those expectations will be based on John's specific skills, sample student, and the behaviors, and really what we can expect. And again, it's balancing that. The fourth sort of variable is the behaviors. If we feel like we have the tasks are solid, the tokens are good, the rewards are good, but the behaviors are still sort of there, we've got to make sure that we're not bringing those behaviors back in to be a problem. We have to keep that in balance. So one thing I want to mention about the behaviors is, you might have noticed that we did not discuss taking the tablet away from John, because we know that removing that tablet is most likely will elicit aggressive behaviors. It's difficult to make a recommendation. I can't make that recommendation on a Zoom call that's going, or a training that's going on YouTube. I can't do that, because what we really would need to do is observe the behavior and have a behavior plan. Pretty much, we want to have a behavior plan so we know exactly when and how. But one strategy that you could use, that I would suggest that could be an option, I'm not making a recommendation, but just something that you would work on, is having John, having him put the tablet down, just putting it down. You're not taking it from him. That's a big thing, because that could elicit behaviors, and you're going to know your student better. But you might have them put it on a spot. Hey, why don't you put it right there, throw the trash away, come back, you get your tablet back, and then you can do something else too. You might have a snack, or you might go for a walk, because we're building up that tolerance. But it really would be best to work with a behavior analyst, like someone like me. If you have an in-home, I always say this in other videos, if you have an in-home ABA program, utilize them, utilize their support, and figure out, and they should really, if this is going on, they should really be taking the lead on designing a behavior reduction program, a behavior intervention program, a plan. So really utilize those supports. But I don't necessarily feel comfortable making that recommendation right now, but how that would actually look. But what I'm looking at is we're going to build up the compliance. We're not worrying about the tablet so much. I mean, we know the tablet's going to be there, but it's more about what can we teach instead. And that teaching instead is, completing tasks, little things here and there, working on that token chart, working on that momentum, because once we get that momentum and John's not just on his iPad all day watching videos, then we'll be able to stretch that out a little bit. So at first we might have, he could earn fine with those activities. The ones that I mentioned before on the other slide of those tasks, it might take him 5 minutes max to complete all of those 5 activities and earn what he wants. It might take you a few weeks to build up to 5 minutes, but if you get to 5 minutes, then you can easily insert another task in there. Then you can make to 6 minutes to 7 minutes to where he's spending more time working on those tasks within the token chart than on the tablet. And even if, you have to pick your battles. It might be appropriate for him to carry his iPad with him. Some of those washing hands you can't, but some of those he could use one hand. Putting on shoes, I don't think you can do with one hand unless they're slip-ons. But we really need to work on, this is sort of eventually a replacement for some of the other behaviors, but really what we want to do is support the compliance, support that implementation and engagement. Rather than trying to eliminate that. That would be a completely different video. And that's something that I probably wouldn't be even comfortable making a video about necessarily on, that's going to go out to anyone, because that is going to be really personalized based on the student's specific behaviors. And especially right now we're doing distance learning. I'm not able to visit your home. I'm not able to see the student and not able to really observe behavior, to collect data on it, having you collect data on it. That's a bigger picture than just a token chart video. So let's talk about a little bit of other things about token charts. So a token chart, I showed them earlier, and it could be used for any number of students. I mean, on our classroom, on our classrooms, we have students from 5 years to 22 years, and token charts can be used for all of them. It's going to look different though, and that's why I'm going to just suggest, like here, it can be modified. So instead of stars, you might use pictures of their favorite characters or toys or videos. Or apps. If your student can read, you might just use text instead of pictures. I'm going to show a couple examples in a second of that. And then if your student can complete more than 5 tasks, you might be able to make a more complex chart. And I'm going to show that in a second too. So this is an example of that text. So this is basically a token chart. Now, the difference here is that you're doing check marks. And there's not a token, a physical token, but it's basically the same thing. You're making a list. You have the tasks they need to complete, and you have what they're working for. So this, if your student can read, you might be able to just make something like this. And a nice thing to notice is this is just a piece of binder paper. Now, clearly it's printed, it's done on the computer, but you can easily just do this. You can make, 4 boxes. I'll show you an example in a second about that. But this is something that if your student can read text, it could look like this. It doesn't have to look like the star chart that I showed 8 slides ago. Here is an intense one. I'll just say this is a pretty complex one. This is still a token chart. It's still, you have a list of tasks. You have a space for them to complete things, to mark off they've done it, and you have what they're working for. The big thing is, so this, it's hard to kind of see. They marked off some things. I'm not sure exactly. I'm wondering if that was for, if those are student names. But what I want to note, and this might be for an entire classroom, it kind of looks like it's an entire classroom of students, but if you just look at one chunk of this, one almost quadrant, but it's really one chunk, it's what are you working for? And then they're doing a points program. Now I've used in the past, I've had to use kind of a point, I've used points programs, and I've also used money programs. I mean, it's still a token chart, but rather than doing tokens, putting tokens down there, I remember I had a client way back when that we had printouts of coins. So every time that the student would complete a chore, they were earning a coin. And the agreement, because that student understood, I needed X number of dollars. Now that student, I remember um, their reward, their prize, they want to go to the movies, and they needed $15 worth of tokens. Now this is a point system, so maybe these students are there might be some other chart over there that they turn in their points. The student that I had, we had a money chart. So as she was collecting, 25 cents here, 30 cents here, 50 cents, dollar, depending on the difficulty of the task. She might get $1 for something that's really hard, that's new, and she might only get 5 cents for something that's super easy. But she's collecting it, and once she fills that board up and she has her $15, then she could go to the movies and get popcorn or whatever she might want to do. This is the same sort of thing. You're just using points. Instead of saying you just need 5 stars, well, now you need 100 points. So 28 points, and I can't read all of these, but you have 25 points. You could get 5 points for taking the trash out. You get 5 points for cleaning your room. You get 10 points for something else. 5 points for brushing your teeth. You could have a point system, which is closer to like a paycheck for us, for adults. It's you do your job, you get your paycheck, you know what you're going to get. You know what you're going to get. You're paid for your work, and then you get your paycheck at the end. You know what your reward's going to be as long as you complete your tasks. So this is a super complex version of it. So I just want to give this an example, because that token chart, you might think, well, my student's older than this. This is too easy for him or her. But you can make it more exciting. You can, and there's teachers pay teachers, a lot of Pinterest. There's other websites where you can find these kind of charts and different varieties of people, different variations of token charts that people have used and are freely available. A lot of them for pay, a lot of them you have to pay for. But I also want to go through here too. This isn't as bare bones as it's going to get, but you might be concerned at looking at all these other charts. Oh, I need to print things out. I need laminating. I need Velcro. You really don't. This is an example of a whiteboard, and a very well-used whiteboard. You can see it's pretty abused, but this is the same thing. Again, you don't have a physical token, but you have your 5 boxes. You have your stars, and what that means, that's what they're earning, is that computer time. Now get a star for staying calm. I don't know, it's a little bit behaviorally not the best definition, but you might want to talk about what they can do rather than staying calm is a little wishy-washy sort of definition. It's hard to define that. But when we're looking at the same thing, all the chores that we had on that other page, throwing trash away, dirty clothes in the hamper, putting on shoes, wiping down tables, something like that. You can have those all listed here. Again, if your student's a reader, they could, if they can read text, you could write those all down. And it's again, the same thing. It's a visual representation where they're going to be completing multiple tasks, multiple steps, and they get the reward at the end. And what I want to say too here is it doesn't need to be a whiteboard. It could be just as easily a piece of paper and a crayon. I've actually had, I remember one time we were out in the community with a client, this is years ago, we had a whiteboard system and we forgot it at the house. And we're in the middle of wherever we were. And I remember we were in a parking lot, we scrounged up, we had found a crayon and a napkin. And we just drew 3 boxes. We're going to go in the store, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and we're going to come back out and you can have a snack or something, whatever it was. It doesn't need to be something, sometimes as adults, we want to make something more exciting and we want it to look awesome and cool. But really at the end of the day, it's just a representation of that student making progress toward their goal. And so if it's a whiteboard, if it's a dry erase, if it's a full token chart with Velcro and laminated parts, that's great. But at the end of the day, it's really about getting them progress toward their goal. Now, as a quick review, we want to you need to identify your goals. You want to identify your students' skills and preferences. That's what we kind of did with John. And then you're going to introduce the token chart slowly. And then you need to modify your strategies and expectations based on their needs and behaviors. And I said, be creative, because not necessarily in the token chart, but be creative, be flexible, and really kind of take it slowly and take it easy. And as always, reach out. Reach out to your teacher if you need support, reach out to me, they can always reach out to me, and then utilize the in-home ABA program or other professionals if they're available to you. So hopefully this is helpful. Again, thank you again, and I'll see you next time.